Okay, we'll dive right in. The title of this presentation is Increasing Your Revenue Without Finding More New Patients. So, without doing more workshops, without spending more money on advertising, without hiring expensive agencies, those kind of things, which is a lot of mistakes that a business owner will make, is they'll try to pour more money into their practice to make more money, which again makes some sense, but a lot of people have a leaky bucket, especially at the front desk. And that's really where we want to dive in and cover how we can know when it's the right time to hire somebody. Do we have a leaky bucket at our front desk, and what's going to ultimately take us to the next step in our practice? So, a little bit about me, my husband, and to my wife Tana. We have two boys. We got Theo and Beckett, and I am the co-owner of a physical therapy practice as well as a virtual admin company, or a remote receptionist company, as we call them now. And so my practice, Be Ready Performance Therapy, we've got two locations. We've been able to scale to four total PTs, including myself. We also have an admin on our team, and we do over $40,000 a month in cash only services, and have been able to really expand and grow our practice using much of what we're going to talk about today. I thought I needed to spend more money on marketing, do more workshops, and spend a lot more time and effort. And I wish I would have figured this out a little bit sooner, and want to share that with you. So, out of that, my wife started a virtual refresh, started helping me in my practice, and eventually just kind of outgrew um, herself as I had more practice owners reaching out and trying to wonder what we were doing. And then before we knew it, we had more and more folks who were reaching out to us. And so we started hiring other admins, training them. And then now that's helped us to grow to where we are today, in which we have, we've helped over 30 practices, cash and hybrid practices at the time of writing this, or recording this here in the top of 2024. And we kind of continue to grow and scale and really help other cash and hybrid practices improve their sales processes, find their bottlenecks in their business, and improve their revenue by simply bringing on somebody who's really trained in the front desk position. So, with our receptionist, really what we're teaching folks to do is how to handle the insurance objection. How do I have a solid phone conversation? How do I convert greater than 80% of the people that I talk to? So if I have 10 people reach out that I get on the phone, I want 8 out of 10 of those people converting to people who are going to come in and purchase high ticket packages. That is ultimately the goal of what we're after. They know all the systems and EMRs of cash-based practices. And really, that's our goal, is just to provide you a really superior quality employee and a really superior quality process to get there. We have tons of case studies. Feel free to check those out on our website, virtualrefreshco.com, and see some of the other work that we've done. So, really, where we want to head today, when is the best time to hire a front desk? What's the cost and delay of hiring somebody or making a poor hire? How do I find top talent? How do I pay these front desk folks? And then ultimately how I lead and manage them. We're kind of going to talk about that whole life cycle, that hiring life cycle, and the effects it can have on your practice if you're not careful. So, when is the time to hire? I don't like to make gut decisions about when I'm going to hire my business, but I do like to make quantitative decisions and let the numbers dictate when that's going to happen. Some of the biggest indicators of that are, hey, I have revenue swings in my business. I have highs and highs, and then I've got lows and lows, and we'll talk about why that's the case. You're stuck in fulfillment mode, right? You're just constantly seeing new patients, and it's like I don't have any room to put more patients because I'm doing admin tasks. That's a big portion of being stuck in fulfillment, which also leads to revenue swings. Trading $20 an hour task for $200+ an hour task. So if you are simply bringing somebody in, and you got somebody that you could see for $200+ an hour as a treatment, and you are instead responding to an email, or you are texting a person and trying to bring them to reschedule their appointment or whatever it might be, that is a $20 task that could be offloaded. You can't get to phone calls. That's the other big thing. If I've got a bunch of missed phone calls, and I'll do the math for you here in just a second of how big that can affect your practice, I can't get to phone calls, that's a big, big problem, and we're losing a lot of revenue that way. Other things, qualitative feel, hey, how you feeling? You feeling burnt out? You're feeling stressed out? You're avoiding getting to those new patient phone calls, and you're bringing a really poor energy to it. That's going to cost you a lot of money. So, What are the goals of hiring admin? Again, we want to offload these $15, $20 hour task for $200 tasks. You're going to take back your time so that you can finally focus on your business and you're not stuck working in it, right? Again, the lifeblood of your business, you are the lifeblood. You have to be able to bring new patients to your door. And if you can't do that anymore, you're going to get stuck in where you want to go. Offloading tasks that are sucking the life out of you, creating graphics on Canva, social media posts, whatever, sales calls at the end of the day, that was sucking the life out of me early on. The other big one, minimizing interruption, is task switching. So many of you guys, you'll switch back and forth between tasks. You get these pings and dings from your phone, and it's a patient you've been trying to get a hold of, and now you got to call them. Like, that's time expensive and very mentally expensive as opposed to you focusing on your practice. And then, biggest thing, hey, it's going to help you stop leaving money on the table, which is what you're after most. Now, again, the $20 task versus the $200 task. We just talked about some of this: rescheduling a client, emailing people back, taking phone calls. Again, if you're bringing crappy energy to your phone calls, you're really going to have a hard time converting. And so what'll happen is now you're talking to somebody on the phone and it's like, yeah, hey, and they start asking questions and you're just over it. So you're just like, yeah, like, look, our cost is $200 for an eval, take it or leave it. And that's somebody you could have converted if you had somebody who had a fresh set of eyes and ears and ready to talk to this person, you would end up converting. And then again, moving the business forward. You have to start thinking as a CEO, not just somebody who is stuck in fulfillment mode, a PT, a chiro, a massage therapist, whatever type of practice it is that you have. You cannot get stuck in fulfillment mode. And if you can start optimizing your system, selling packages, even treating patients is okay in certain instances, but then also being able to get into some marketing mode and move your business forward, right? So, what are some revenue swings? What are some things that will lead to that, and how does that impact your business? So, a delay in hiring can cost you a ton of money. I did this for months and months and months. I had a business coach telling me, begging me to hire an admin, and I didn't think that I was ready to do it because my revenue kept kind of on this yo-yo, and I didn't think that I was ready. When in actuality, that would have saved me lots of money. So let's say we've got a 40-hour work week. The max visits you can see are 30 a week at $199 average. That roughly gets us 6K per week in revenue if we're seeing all 30 of those patients. It leaves you about 10 hours a week for admin work. And what happens is stuff starts slipping through the cracks. You don't have the energy to reschedule people. You don't have the energy to get new people in the door. You're not doing marketing. And so what happens is now your revenue drops. And what happens is now you're only seeing 20 a week. And so now you're $2,000 shy of what you were doing before. And now you've got 20 hours of getting after patients, follow up marketing, etc. So you hustle really, really hard and then you drive your revenue back up, right? And now I've got back to my 30-hour a week, but now I'm time poor again, right? I struggle to manage the business, stuff starts falling through the cracks. And then now I'm stagnant and I'm stuck, and I've been at this point for 6 months or a year when you are your own problem at that point and you need to get some help. Now, this could be the same thing for somebody who's already got some front desk help and they're struggling to keep up and their conversions start dropping. This could be the other place that you look at this for some of you practice owners who already have staff. Maybe now is that time you look to outsource some of your some of your sales processes, to a different front desk and let your current front desk do only patient-facing interaction type stuff, right? The other big thing, again, you're worrying you can't hire somebody. You're worried you can't hire another provider or another front desk. When again, you could really do that if you just would go ahead and bite the bullet and hire somebody. And now you're losing 2K a week when you're in the low, and it may take a month or 2 months to rebuild that. And so again, it's a vicious cycle that can be really hard to get out of and lead to you being really stale in your business. So the other big thing is just the front desk bottleneck. And whether you have front desk staff now, you haven't brought them on, or you've considered doing it, the key is to track in the life cycle where each of these patients are. If I've got 10 people reaching out, how many of those people did we get on the phone? If I got them on the phone, how many of those people are ending up in the clinic? How many actually show up for an evaluation, or how many were scheduled for an evaluation? How many actually showed up? And how many people bought a plan of care with you or completed one? And that's for you a great place to identify where the biggest bottlenecks are in your practice at that point. Okay. Now, we've got organic. So, just going to paint you through a scenario or example here. Let's say we've got organic traffic. We've got 20 people who reach out to you a month, but because you're busy, you only get 50% of those people in. You get 10 people that actually come in. 10 of those people never actually went anywhere. I used 8 here. Let's assume there's a little bit of drop off, and you're not going to convert every single person that comes into the clinic. But let's say your average lifetime value is about 2,000 for your front end package. 8 times 2,000, that's about $16,000 in lost revenue per month. That's $190,000 per year lost in revenue. That's a crap ton of money, right? And that's just on 20 evals. And I get some practices that have got 70, 80, 100 plus leads coming in, and we're leaving a lot on the table because we don't have the bandwidth to follow up with them. And this, like, that's a full-time salary for an admin and another provider at that point, right? And it makes me sick to see practice owners leaving that much money on the table. Let's look at that example on a paid traffic now. Ideally, in paid traffic, 30, at least in PT industry, 30 to 40% is the amount of people that you want to bring in that you should convert. So if I have 10 people who opt in for paid Facebook traffic, and I should get in touch with 3 to 4 of those people and actually get them scheduled for an evaluation. Okay. So let's say you were converting 30, but now you drop to 20 because you don't have the time to follow up with people. Let's assume you got 20 leads over the course of that month. And so again, there's a difference, 20 times 3 versus 20 times 2. So 6, 4. Let's assume that's 2 lost leads, right? So pretty modest, low amount. Sometimes it's even higher than that. Multiply that by the lifetime value. It's about $4,000 per month, $48,000 per year. So if I combine both of these are pretty modest examples. Oftentimes, this paid traffic can be even worse. I mean, especially when you start talking about ad spend too. Look, I've lost 238,000 total for the year, right, or about $19,000 per month. That's a crap ton of money just left on the table that is being just by the wayside, right? And that's where oftentimes I'm able to find a lot of improved revenue for practice owners by simply getting them to improve their front end sales processes and follow up processes. The other big question we get a lot: in person versus remote. Look, I'm 4 years in. We still have a remote admin. She does occasionally do some in person stuff, but most of my in office sales goes on with our providers. I think certain business models lend themselves to others. But if you've got somebody handling, in the clinic, it's nice to have somebody to welcome and greet people, although it's not essential. I've also seen this fall in the hands of the provider before as well. Like for us, like we are the welcoming and greeting committee, right? But it does help with the kind of improved customer experience, if you will. But look, if your clinic's big enough and you've got your current front desk person answering phone calls, trying to take a sales call, you got somebody new walking in and they're checking people out, it's like, dude, they can't do all of that. And now their conversion rate is going to tank. Even though if historically they've been really good, oftentimes practice owners will say, hey, they're doing really great. And then now they've had this big drop off and they don't know why. Or they just spend more money on ads in order to get people in. And historically, they've converted well and they got a good personality. You get along well, they're a good culture fit, but you don't even know that they've dropped off because you haven't even tracked that information long term, right? So from there, that's kind of my case for the need to hire somebody, right? And oftentimes people will make this rash move and jump to hire somebody, but their business is really unorganized and they don't have the systems to support front desk staff, right? So this is one of my favorite pictures, kind of that entrepreneurial seizure where you're just chasing everything and you're just chasing your own tail and you're very confused about where you want to go. Oftentimes I talk to practice owners, they're like, hey, my systems are good, right? Well, the hit by the bus test, like if you got hit by a bus, you couldn't show up to work tomorrow, would your business operate and how long could it operate without you? Some big things to think about. Hey, I've got a centralized location where all my leads go and I know where they are in the life cycle, right? That way you can track that data and figure out where your bottleneck is. Most people may have a centralized location, but they don't know where they are in the life cycle, and that's a problem. I've got documented and consistent processes for follow up of each lead, right? That includes a sales script. It includes how I follow up with somebody if they say no because of their insurance. If they drop off your books, like how do you follow up with those people? a written and or video handbook so that an employee can review and know exactly how to do things, right? So that if I brought 10 people into your business, they would be able to open it up and each of those 10 people would execute perfectly exactly what is in that handbook. And that's when you really have your systems written out, documented, and how to make it happen. Another big thing, this is a little bit in onboarding, but hey, I've got written processes and systems to tell me how I grade this employee and what does success look like. And we'll talk about that a little later on as well. So once you get your systems in place, that can be a big key to getting there. Portions of this, look, simplicity sells and scales. So it's like if you've got these really convoluted processes that are in your head and that maybe your long-term employee have tried to figure out, that stuff can get really hard as you bring other people on board. So one thing is like get everything in one place. We have a CRM that we can get everything in place, including my phones, my emails, my Google reviews, my lead management. All that stuff's in one, so I don't have to sit here and ask 150,000, open up 150,000 apps to get where I want to go. The other big one, own your KPIs. Like if you bring an employee on and you don't know where your KPIs are before bringing them on, and then you bring an employee on, like how do you know if they're being successful? Like you don't, and that ultimately leads to recurrent issues and problems in your business when that's going on. So, hey, what's your biggest bottleneck? What's your phone call conversion rate? What's your package conversions? Where are most of your leads coming from? And then ultimately what your lifetime value is. And then you can backtrack some of that, like we talked about earlier. How much revenue might you be potentially leaving on the table? Okay. So now let's hire an admin. Now we got our systems and we're a little more organized. The big thing, people have a really hard time finding good quality talent. They either don't know where to look or they just throw an Indeed ad out and hope for the best. And that can be a big problem for arguably one of the most important positions of your business because it can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're not careful. Okay. So, look, you got to get the right person on the bus, right? If your business is the vehicle, the bus, you have to get the right person in the right seat all along that process. Okay. So, again, my 94-year-old grandfather in a Formula One car, he's the wrong person on the right vehicle. And your business may be the perfect vehicle, but if you don't have the right person on it, it's going to cost you and be a major headache, right? A word of caution: don't hire your spouse or your significant other. The spouse can work. I brought Tana on into my business, but her goal was to quit her full-time teaching job, and she was involved on a very heavy part-time basis with me early on, with the intention, like we had very clear guidelines. But oftentimes it doesn't work. You bring your spouse, your significant other on, they don't really know what they're doing. You didn't really train them. You're paying them a really cheap wage, or maybe you're exchanging services for them, and now nothing's getting done, and you're really frustrated. You're in the same thing, right? Cheaper is not always better here, right? It's like you get what you pay for. Like it's the same thing in healthcare. It's the same thing ever. You get what you pay for, and finding cheap college students, cheap overseas VAs, like again, that stuff is going to they're going to have a hard time on the phone. They're going to have a hard time selling on the phone and convincing people to come in. And if you aren't, hiring or paying appropriately, that can lead to a big problem with this as well. I think begin with the end in mind. If your goal is to scale, get a lot of providers, build this really big practice, like just hire somebody who's got the capacity to either grow with you or who wants to grow with you, who's a really good culture fit. Like those are the people that you want the most. One bad hire can snowball. You make one bad hire and you don't have good systems to start with, your admin comes in and they immediately leave and you're back at square one. And you spent months training this person. So now it's cost you thousands of dollars because of their poor performance, and they're really struggling to convert, and you spend all this time training them and now they leave, right? So that's the big consequence. One bad hire can really snowball and get where you want to go. Now, other big thing, be weary of like admin agencies, right? Like they control everything and it can get very expensive at scale. And that's kind of why we don't do we do the exact opposite of that, is because I am not interested in, because as you grow in scale, they're either going to charge you commissions, or that person isn't going to be able to scale with you. And now you've got somebody who really isn't bought into your business. So they're underperforming the agency. Sometimes there's a call center. Sometimes you got multiple different people working your account. And it's just a mess, right? You don't have somebody who's clearly bought into your systems, your processes, what your business is doing. Those people never convert well. Or if they charge you a commissions, it's going to get way too expensive at scale, especially if you're a busy practice and you're running a lot of volume. It's going to get way too expensive as opposed to if you just paid that person directly. And now you've got this big bottleneck where the agency is collecting all the revenue or a good portion of the revenue, and that employee isn't there. So the only way that works is it either gets very expensive or they farm it out to cheap labor. And that's the only way these ad agencies work, or excuse me, these admin agencies. And so I would just be very weary of those. The other big thing, don't settle. Don't throw an Indeed ad up, have 5 people apply or even 50 people apply. And you're like, well, got through all these people and I've done a one-on-one interview and this person's okay, but it's all I've got. It's like, that's just not going to work. And I encourage you not to settle there. What are some qualities to look for? Contrary to popular belief, a bubbly personality doesn't always mean someone else is going to be great on the phone. Oftentimes, these people overtalk, they can't be concise, and they can't get the job done for converting these people to insurance, to not using their insurance. Social and emotional intelligence. This is probably the biggest thing. Can they carry a conversation? How are they? If you ask them kind of what seems to be a weird or kind of off question, can they, if you talk to them, do they give you the really like interviewee type answers, or are they really original? Like they clearly have a lot of introspection. They can emote well. They use their hands. Whatever, right? Like they just seem very in tune with their mind. That's what you want. You want someone who's going to be with you long term, not short term. Again, this is why ad agency or admin agencies don't work. You want somebody who's going to be committed to you. So oftentimes I'll see people hire college students. Oh, they can be here for the summer or next couple of years, whatever. It's like turnover is expensive. Like I don't want to constantly be retraining people, right? Bonus if they've experienced treatments like yours before. Maybe they're a big believer. In chiropractic care or a big believer in physical therapy, or they've experienced a cash provider, a hybrid provider before. Those are people that oftentimes sell really well. Or, hey, maybe maybe you're a postpartum a public floor practice and you've got a postpartum mom. That's a really nice fit sometimes. Or you're a CrossFit specific practice and, they've got some CrossFit or functional fitness kind of background, could be huge too. Other big thing, let's weed out some money mindset issues from the get-go, like asking about insurance. Hey, how do you feel about charging, $200+ a session? Have you done that before? Just getting a sense of that on the forefront can make your life a lot easier on the back end, right? You want to weed out those that struggle with technology as well. The last thing you want is somebody stepping in your business and they're good culture fit, and then months down the line it's like, oh man, this person doesn't know how to use a computer, like this is rough. And so just asking questions specifically to those two things can be huge. Now, other big thing is you want to have a solid bound out interview process. Oftentimes people will just take applications, they'll move them right into an in-person interview, and then they'll make a decision on whether to hire them. And that's a really tough thing to do. So typically, and this is what we do, we take applications, I look at those, I ask for a video submission as part of the next interview. I'll move them into a group interview or a video-based interview at that point, then or a phone call interview, then an in-person interview or a second interview, via Zoom if they're remote. That's what we do with our team. And then at that point, we do what's called a scorecard interview, and that's basically like, hey, here are these are the final people that we want in. And we teach all of our folks that work with us to do this. But hey, what are the roles and responsibilities of this position? Can you meet all of those? Do all those sound good to you? Do you feel good about it? Hey, this is what the pay is and the commissions are. Do you feel good about that? That way it aligns pay, it aligns expectations, and now there's not this big mystery of like who are we bringing on, who are we not bringing on. Like, oh, I wasn't sure that this was going to pay that, and now they're underpaid, and now they quit 3 months in because you're not paying them enough money, and they thought it was going to be more. Or I didn't realize that this role had a lot of like phone calls, so like I'm kind of out. And it's like that's a problem, and it creates turnover and an issue, and that's where that scorecard interview can be really helpful on top of obviously this weed out process. Next, how do we hire and pay this person? Which can be oftentimes a really tough thing. So, 1099 versus W2. If you're a bigger practice, W2 makes a lot of sense, but it's like, look, consult a lawyer on this. It's going to be different from state to state, and can really help protect you by having the right structure in place. There's a quick word too on like counting hours versus flat rate. I think a flat rate works way better, especially if we're talking remote employees or somebody who's taking a lot of phone calls. Like, how do you count the hours when you have 10 phone calls who reach out and you're just like, I don't really know how many people, like how many hours I work today? Like, that's impossible. And it could create a micromanaging type environment. That's why I think commissions work really well. I do a 60 to 90-day trial period. It protects you in the event that you made a poor hire and ensures that this person's going to work really hard to get up to KPI in those 90 days. And then look, pay according to the tasks that are being done. Like if you're being a cheapskate and you're just paying somebody the smallest amount of money, like that's going to create a problem for you. So, if they're copying spreadsheets, like that's a cheap, easy task. Like an eighth grader could do that versus sales calls. Like that's a much higher end task. And it's going to demand a little bit more money out of you at that point. Texting patients versus writing email copy. Email copy, really specific, going to take a little bit more kind of umph from you, so to speak. And then we've got texting patients to reschedules. Like that's pretty straightforward. On average, $18 an hour for some of that lower end stuff, $30+ an hour for sales calls can definitely set you up well. If you're a smaller 1 to 2 provider business, around that 15 to 25 hours a week probably works well, depending on the task that you have. But this is where I think that commissions is absolutely the best place to go for this, especially for phone coverage, because you'll hire somebody and you want like your phone's going to ring 40 hours a week regardless, right? And even into the evening hours. I don't want to pay somebody for 3 hours of phone coverage from 9 to 12 5 days a week, and then what do I do with the rest of the time? I'm treating patients. Like I can't get a hold of this person, so it's like I might as well not even pay anybody, right? Versus commissions, this is where this works really well, keeps the cost affordable, but makes the admin hungry to follow up with people. So the other thing, look, quit being cheap here. This is the single most important position in your business. Like I just told you how much money you could be losing out on. Like, don't lose out on that type of money, right? The other big thing, like saving $500 with constant turnover and poor results at the front desk position, it's going to cost you thousands. Like, I'm not going to lose sleep over $500. It'll more than pay for itself. It's like you sell one package, it paid for this employee. And again, this is the single most important portion. Now, this is where a lot of practice owners make big mistakes, right? So, onboarding is arguably one of the more important portions of the process here. So, again, the right person on the wrong bus leads to failure. So, it's like if I've got a Formula One driver, they're driving a Honda Civic, like they're not going to get the job done, right? I can hand you the most top notch person, fully trained, ready to go. If your systems, processes, and your onboarding is not good, they'll fail 100% of the time. And that's really where we like to help folks who work with us really button up that process and give you our exact playbook on how to pull that off. For the first 90 days, look, that's the make or break portion of a new hire. It sets the tone for whether or not they're going to be up to KPI or whether or not you need to let them go, right? And that needs to happen sometimes as well. So the other big thing, what defines success and what is the very clear path for them to reach that and how are they going to get there? So some of that is like you're going to have to block your schedule before you even extend offers to people so that you can actually meet with them. It's like it's going to be heavy meeting the first couple of weeks. You're going to have weekly check-ins after that, and then eventually you can get by with monthly. But really, you need to be checking in with this person and making sure that they're there. You can't treat a full-time caseload and expect this person to succeed. And a lot of employee success comes down to you having a plan rather than trying to create some chaos. Create an environment where your employee feels comfortable to come to you too, right? Like we've got this really open environment with our staff where it's like, hey, I just sit down and meet with them sometimes and we just chat. It's like, hey, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? Like, how do you feel about your work? Like, what makes you feel fulfilled? And just having these conversations with them can be huge. The other big thing, find out how they like to learn. Like, it's a simple question and it can save you a lot of headache. If they don't like watching videos and learning and you give them a bunch of videos, like, gonna have a hard time, Or how do they take feedback? Some people are a little bit more delicate with how they like to receive feedback. And if you're coming off like a turd and all your feedback that you give them, hey, you're not doing a good job. I thought you were trained on this. Like, they're gonna leave, you know. So that's exactly what you don't want to have happen. Now, management. Like, how do I manage this person? Please take the guesswork out of what defines success. Success, like that's like going to college and you spending an entire year or semester in a class and you not knowing how you're doing until the very end. Like, and they're like, all right, here's your grade. And you're like, man, I made a D in this class. Like, what happened? And it's like you didn't have any feedback as you went. It's where concurrent feedback scorecards work really well on a weekly basis and a monthly basis, just outlining what the KPIs are. What is success defined as? What's your phone call conversion rate? Or what's Facebook traffic versus cold traffic or hot traffic? You know, what's the package conversion for the therapist? Is it remaining steady or is it changing? You know, how are you managing the pipeline? How do you show up to meetings? Like, what's your demeanor? Are you coachable? Like, those are things that define success. And how do I fix some of that stuff early on? Some of it's just you sitting down and auditing their phone calls. Some of it's you just sitting and having a meeting and talking to this person, and figuring out how they feel and making them feel better and more bought into the process. Because if you have somebody who's not bought into the process, just going to continue to fail no matter what you do. The other big thing, look, don't settle for mediocrity, but also extensive grace. Like, a lot of this stuff is new for these people. They're maybe switched into a different type of role. Some of these sales calls are not easy, but again, we're not going to settle for mediocrity, but we're not going to be, jerks about how we lead and manage these people as well. Then the other big thing, like, sales calls are the lifeblood of your business. Like, you got to be diligent with how you're offloading these things. It can be done, but it's very hard. It's got to be the right person. You got to have the right processes, the right onboarding processes, and continue to go live and continue to manage them as they're going live. Now, the other big thing, battle test them before they really step into your business. The last thing you want to do is the first couple calls that they take is, or that they've ever practiced, are the ones that they're taking for your business. Like, role play with these people, listen to it. And if they aren't performing well, like, maybe you didn't message something well to them, and maybe the buck stops with you. So take a little bit of ownership of that process, and that can be big. Now, the final step of the kind of life cycle of having front desk, hey, you got to retain these people, get them some skin in the game, right? Look, pay them well. Don't be cheap here. Consider a raise if they've been at the same base rate for a while. Again, like we talked about earlier, commissions work the absolute best for this type of role. Offer some performance bonuses. Like, if they reach a certain Facebook conversion, like we do this for our admin, like, I'm gonna give them a bonus because they're doing a good job, And again, it's the lifeblood of your business, and a couple $100 is gonna go a long way in helping them feel bought into what you're doing. Help them figure out what they love to do more of. If they like doing social media posts, then great. Maybe you give them some social media posts to make. Or our admin loves doing some training with clients. Great. We have given her a couple of clients, not to overload her. We'll give her a couple clients to train so that she still has some skin in the game and enjoys coaching, right? And just give a crap about these people, especially if they're remote. Like, do they have a family? What hobbies do they have? And just showing that you care can go a really long way. Some final thoughts: hire before you think you need to. Continue to kick the can down the road is going to cost you a lot of money. Go back and pay attention to that example that I gave you. Do a full interview process and don't settle. You've been stuck, with the revenue swings. Like, front desk is the key to next steps and helping you grow and get your business there. If you're feeling burnout, and just take the next steps so that you can finally buy back your time, and then at that point you don't have another job for yourself. You actually got a business because you got somebody helping you grow this thing. And then, if you do have an admin, get to know your admin well. How do you help financially incentivize them? Do you switch over to some commission, something like that? How can you better get to know your admin? Which I think, if there's nothing else you take away, if you already have a staff, an employee, get to know these people well, and what makes them tick, and then what creative ways can I get them to do more of what they love. So, cool. I hope this stuff was helpful. If you want to get in contact with me, feel free to follow me on Facebook. You can just search my name or my wife's name. You can find our website. We've got tons of case studies, testimonials there, virtualrefreshcode.com. Check out our YouTube channel. We continue to put some content out there, or just shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer some questions, or you can direct message me on Facebook. And otherwise, I hope this stuff was helpful. continue to ask questions, and yeah, we'd love to help.